in this video, let's take the work that we've already done and let's take it to another level in terms of incorporating the editor. And this is something that I've spoke about in previous videos, but essentially what I want to do now is take this simple pattern and I want to start tweaking it further. And I want to do this beyond the capabilities of simply editing our MIDI flags to resequence this. Although that is pretty cool that simply by adjusting the MIDI flags, we can get these totally different beats. But anyways, let's go ahead. I'm going to dial down some of the processing that I've done on these samples because I think for the most part, they sound pretty good. So just bear with me for a quick moment here while I go through and dial this back a little bit. Okay, so that's working for me right now. But keep in mind, this is a pretty cool thing that happened. And this is the great thing about this plugin is that simply by adjusting things, and they don't even have to be necessarily perfectly on the grid, you could just, choose a grid mode that you like and start adjusting things, and you have the potential to trigger some completely different patterns. In fact, I think maybe I'll work with this as a starting point for now. So one thing that we can have a look at doing is triggering additional samples. So for example, we have a pretty straight up snare drum over here in terms of it happening on the offbeat. So if we switch our grid to a quarter note, you'll see that we have our snare happening on 2 and 4. Now, because of the way I've dragged the MIDI markers over here, that's given us a cool vibe. And you know what? I think we'll keep this in mind. Maybe we won't use it for now, but we'll definitely keep it in mind. Let's go back to our 16th notes and let me just drag out my MIDI markers over here so these flags are letting this whole cycle play. Now, in terms of being able to adjust and edit individual samples and use these pads, this is where Regroover Pro is really, really handy because essentially when I'm in this mode, I can double click here. And now you see I have this gray area. Now I have these same flags, which I can adjust like this. Keep in mind, this is going to respect and respond to our grid mode. Usually when I'm doing this type of thing, I will come in, I will turn my grid mode off, and I will use the manual drag handles, and I'll give myself a little bit before, and I'll give quite a lengthy amount after. So now as I hover down here, you'll notice that I have this waveform. And essentially, just to recap, the way I've done that is simply by double clicking in this section over here. So we double click, let's drag out the drag handles, give ourselves a little bit before, give ourselves a decent amount of after. Let's have a listen to make sure. I'm going to use our shortcut. Okay, we can tweak this further, but essentially I never want to cut anything off. I want to adjust my envelope in the editor. So now as I hover at the bottom, we have this waveform icon. I click it, I hold. You can see that little status bar that came up. Now the next thing that I can do over here is I can simply adjust this and I can drag this. Let's go ahead, let's drag this snare into C#5. Okay, so now we have this snare sample, which we generated from a layer that we isolated. That's now available in our expansion kit. So now if I go over to my editor tab, and you'll see I can select these different tabs over here, I can go ahead and play this. So first thing that I want to do is same way we can adjust the MIDI marker flags, I can adjust the in point and out point of this particular sample. Now I can cut into the sample a little bit if I want. What I typically like to do is put it right at the start. And of course, we can now adjust the envelope from this section over here, which is just affecting this pad. Now, I obviously wouldn't do this, but what I would consider doing is dragging my end handle till I hear the end of it. So I have something that's happening here. I could go like this, and then now I can use the ADSR envelope from within this matrix, this cell matrix editor. Maybe move this back. And I can just constantly tweak this until I'm happy with everything. Maybe I want to fade this. Bring this flag back a little bit. And this is just a matter of fine-tuning it until I'm completely happy. Now, another thing that we can do as well is we can reverse samples. So this is pretty cool. So in order to do this, let's just do a recap over here. And I'm going to double click here. And let's just pull this out a little bit. This is essentially going to be pretty much the same sample, but that's okay. Let's drag this one. I'm going to click, wait for that status bar. Let's drag this into E4. We'll go into our editor. Now we have essentially the same thing, but let's go ahead and reverse this. And now I can start the in point from here, the out point from here. We're going to have a reverse snare. And of course, we can adjust our ADSR. Let's go ahead and drag this down a little bit, and we can really shape this and make it sound exactly like we want. So we could have this section. Let's go back into our layers. Let's see if we can grab a kick. We'll go ahead and drag this out. Like I say, I always like to do a little bit more. I'm going to wait till I get this icon, click, hold, drag. You see that it's rendered. Now I'm going to drag this onto C5, back into my editor tab. And now I can take this. I like to drag it right to the beginning. And let's pull this back to here. Maybe we'll give a little bit of a fade out. A little bit of a click. So I can do this. And also can drag this. Now, this is really cool because we can really adjust this and make it sound exactly the way we want. And I can pull down this as well. So I'm totally changing the sound here. Let's pull this back a little bit, maybe like that. I don't mind the decay. And I'm going to pull this, see if I can get rid of that tick at the end. This is just a matter of finessing this sample. A little bit too much. Pull this back to here. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So now essentially, in addition to having these layers over here, we also have these samples. And then, as you can expect, in addition to being able to trigger the layers and use the MIDI flags over here to trigger these different sections and to trigger different patterns, we can also trigger the different expansion pads that we've programmed out. Now, this really takes things to another level. So in the next video, let's go ahead and let's continue to develop this idea. And maybe we'll do some MIDI programming so we can get some of these one-shots happening in conjunction with our loopable sections that are already playing from the layer mixer in Regroover Pro. So we'll catch you in the next video.